So good morning and welcome to the last day of Working Mums Careers Week. I'm Mandy Garner. I'm editor of Workingmums.co.uk, and I'm here with Karen Derbyshire, who is Operations Director at Realise. Realise is a national early years skills and training provider, and Karen's here to talk about their free Skills Bootcamp in early years and how it can provide an accelerated route to a paid apprenticeship in a local nursery. I'm going to turn it over to Karen now to introduce herself and just say a little bit more about her own background and how she came into working in early years.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mandy. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having us and myself personally. So I'm here to talk about having a career in early years and what that means for working mums. So I myself started my career in early years at the tender age of 16 and worked in it right up until having my first baby, who is now 26 years old, so not quite a baby anymore. And it really complemented being a mum and taking my baby to work with me. So worked in the industry for about 4 or 5 years before I had my first child. And it was great because I got to see him every day, which was absolutely fantastic. And then I moved into training 26 years ago and have worked in further education ever since. So I think that's the other thing that I'd really like to talk about today, the opportunities that working in early years provides. It's not just about working in settings, although that's obviously the bulk of what people do, but there are opportunities after that. So when your children get to an age where you're wanting to explore other opportunities within early years, there's plenty of progression routes for anybody that wants to progress in their career.
Really interesting, yes, and lots to think about there and unpack, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. Please do put questions in the chat, and I will put them to Karen as we go along. So Karen, so you've said yourself that being a working mums, and going into early years, you know what, I guess you know what the benefits and are for people who are trying to balance working life alongside family life. Can you sort of say a little bit more about why it's such a great choice for working mums?
Yeah, I think there's probably a bit of a perception that, working in early years equals very, very long hours. And as probably most of you will know, nurseries are usually open from 7:30 in the morning till 6, 6:30 of an evening. But I think definitely more recently, there's definitely more flexibility around actually working a shorter shift or, only working a couple of days a week. It's very well documented that early years is in a recruitment crisis, and that I think has enabled early years employers to rethink their strategy. Very traditionally, when I started in early years, people worked 50 hours a week. You did 5, 10 hour days, and that was kind of the expectation. But definitely, particularly more recently, early years employers are open to that more flexible working request. So looking at part-time hours, looking at hours around schools, so being able to do the drop-off and potentially the school pickup. But a really important thing to remember is a lot of early year settings will have provision. So if you are starting early, they may do a before and after schools club to enable your child again to attend the setting with you. The early years sector is very, very broad. So it's not just about large nursery settings that are open from 7:30 till 6, 6:30. There are obviously preschool, playgroup, settings that open in between those hours. So maybe do like a 9:30 till 11:30. So there's lots of different varied opportunities. It's not just about, doing long days. It's about having those conversations with potential employers about what you're able to do, how you want to fit that around your work-life balance to be able to support your children.
Really interesting, because I remember I had children long time ago.
Yeah.
But I remember it was quite inflexible. In fact, the nursery hours that you could get as a parent, you had to have either a half day, which I couldn't make head nor tail of, because by the time I commuted, it wouldn't have worked for me, or a full day. But there wasn't anything like a school day. And now that the hours are much more flexible for parents as well, aren't they? So
Yeah.
it makes sense that the staff as well would be flexible. So tell me a little bit more about your Skills Bootcamp and what that involves.
So it probably does a bit what it says on the tin. If you were signing up to a fitness boot camp, you kind of know it's going to be very intensive and it's going to be over a short period of time, but you're going to get everything that you need out of it to kind of feel better about yourself. And skills boot camps are exactly the same as that. So they're an initiative that launched in early years in February of this year. So in the majority of cases, they're funded via the Department for Education. And it just allows people who are thinking about entering into early years for the first time or are considering a career change from a different sector to really get all of the knowledge and skills that early years employers are looking for. So traditionally, people tend to start at level 2 in their career. So they work towards a level 2 qualification and they progress to a level 3 and then maybe a level 5. This allows people to almost bypass that level 2, that entry level, and go straight on to that level 3 qualification. So when we first looked at skills boot camps, we sat down with a number of early years employers and said, if you had somebody that was looking to come into the sector for the first time or retrain from a different sector, what are the knowledge, skills and behaviours that you'd want them to have at interview? So, you know, it's a scary place, isn't it, entering into a sector for the first time or retraining from something you've known for such a long time. To sort of, you know, have that starting point that an employer is looking for. So that's how we've created our skills boot camps. What are early years employers looking for? What do we need our skills bootcamp learners on exit to be able to know and do to enable them to get through that that interview? So they're very, very flexible. We've not got a one size fits all. We've got 3-week programs that people can attend face to face. And that's every 4 days a week for 3 weeks. But obviously, if you're, you know, a parent that's obviously got some caring responsibilities, then we've enabled that journey for those people. So we've got 4 mornings a week for 6 weeks, or you could do 4 afternoons, or you could even do 4 evenings if that fits in with your home life. So if you're waiting for your partner to get back of an evening, you can study in the evenings. So traditionally they last about 6 weeks, but we can also do 12-week programs as well. So we've launched a Saturday where you can come every Saturday for 12 weeks and do the skills boot camps. And I know somebody's just asked there, are they online?
I was going to just jump in.
Sorry, I can see it popping up. So we did start off doing some face-to-face cohorts, and that's where we were doing the kind of 3 weeks. But obviously that can be a barrier for some people traveling into a city centre, you know, finding parking or a bus ride. So the majority of our programmes are now online. So if you were looking for a career in early years and you wanted to attend the Skills Bootcamp, our teams would have that conversation with you at the very beginning. What fits in with your current situation? Is it a morning online for the next 6 weeks? You can join that, or is it an afternoon or an evening? So it's super flexible and it's completely free to join. It is at level 3, so the teaching that you're going to do is actually going to be at level 3. It's a very high level sort of entry course that that people are asked to do. So again, it's not fluffy. It's not what employers don't want. It's exactly what they're looking for at the level that you're gonna go into after the Skills Bootcamp.
Okay, great. And I know there's been lots of questions popping up, and I'll put some of those towards the end. But can you so what's actually covered in the program for a level 3 sort of qualification?
Yeah, as I say, it's really, really in-depth. So there's 12 learning phases that our learners go through. So it's 2 sessions for each learning phase, depending on people's attendance. But we start off with things like teamwork and communication. You know, it's quite a different environment. It's not corporate. It's, you know, very much all about the team and how you work together to benefit the children. Child development, so we look at how children learn and develop, how we assess them, how we observe them, how we create their next steps, how we cope with transition and attachment. So when children move into different rooms or onto school, how we can support their emotional needs. We look at the early years foundation stage. So this is what all early years settings are judged by when Ofsted come out to visit them. So we talk about all of that because, again, employers are going to want to know that you know about that. And then we've got things like safeguarding, health and safety, equality and diversity, and working with children with SEND, you know, which might be something that is a real passion that people want to explore further. And all of that is underpinned by the laws and legislation that kind of cover the early years sector. So you'll be, again, really, really knowledgeable about that when you get in front of an early years employer.
Great. And so some of the questions coming in are about what kind of skills, or what, do you need A levels? Do you need, what kind of qualifications might you need to go on one of these skills boot camps? Is there an assessment process before you start, apart from finding out what your needs are?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's no minimum requirements. We don't ask for GCSEs or A levels or any prior experience in early years. Obviously, we want to test your passion. You've got to be really, really passionate to work in early years. And that's something that we'll chat to you about. What are your kind of your end goals? What do you want to do now? What do you want to do in the future? Because there is the opportunity to go straight onto a level 3 qualification at the end of it, we do a maths and English assessment. And that's just to make sure that you are getting the support that you need. So it might be that before the boot camp, we do some support on those functional skills in maths and English, or it could be that you're at a level that you can come straight onto the boot camp and progress onto that level 3 qualification afterwards. One of the other things that we work with people on once they're on the boot camp is those employability skills. So looking at CV writing, interview techniques, but it's really specific to early years. So, for example, when you go for an interview in early years, you will be expected to stay and play with the children. And even things as simple as that, how do you get down on the children's level? How do you make eye contact with them? How do you communicate with them? How do you be curious about what's going on in the room? So we'll be preparing you very specifically for this particular sector.
Okay, great. And where do people go? I mean, I know it's launched fairly recently, but what are they? Do they go so they can do a level 3 at the end and then go into, I guess, a higher up position, or do they tend to go straight into a nursery and work their way up in a nursery?
Yeah, so obviously we'll be looking at kind of your progression whilst you're on the Skills Bootcamp. So looking at settings that are advertising for apprenticeships at the end of the Skills Bootcamp, or it could be that if we don't have a vacancy, how that might, where around locally to you have got vacancies advertised. And I think sometimes one of the things that I'd like to talk about is the fact that people think apprenticeships are for 16 to 18-year-olds or for young people. And they're absolutely not. The age range of people that join our programs are from 16 over 65. We still have people now that join our programs. So don't think that rules you out, that you've got to be in a certain sort of age bracket, because you don't. And employers post skills boot camps, we encourage them to pay above national minimum wage, because obviously people are coming in with certain knowledge, skills and behaviours before post skills boot camp. So again, don't just assume it's an apprenticeship wage. We always work with the employer to make sure it's reflective. So we will be working with you to put you into an employed position that allows you to study for your level 3 qualification. And level 3 is what all of the early years employers look for. It's what Ofsted look for. There are certain regulated qualifications that Ofsted look for when they come to visit. So the level 3 is kind of like the gold standard that everybody wants. But after that, you can go on to do your level 5. So we offer a level 5 apprenticeship that's for lead practitioners that are looking to obviously take that next step in their career. And we've also linked in with universities, so you can go on to do a degree in childhood studies. And then after that, you can even become an early years teacher. So this Skills Bootcamp, it could really open opportunities for you to get to degree level if that's what you wanted to do.
Great. And we did a poll, before this, and everybody was asked, what the barriers, what they thought the main barriers for them were in getting into this kind of early years career. And unsurprisingly, the one that came out top was the flexible job careers, which I think you've talked about quite a bit. But also, I guess, things like confidence and time, the amount of time that might be involved and whether they can make it work. What do what kind of, response do you have to those kind of issues? The confidence, I guess you're giving them the training to try and give, build
and
that.
the questions that you'll be asked to interview, early years employers will want to know that you understand safeguarding and health and safety and communicating with children. Those are kind of prerequisites, if you like, when you get to the interview. So we'll be talking about all of that on the Skills Boot Camps. We also have a career coach, which will be able to help you go through that interview process. So, preparing you for questions, what to wear. And when you get in there, people, these early years employers are constantly engaging with training providers like ourselves, because it's an industry that requires you to have certain levels of qualifications. They know how to support people that are entering into this sector for the first time. So you'll be assigned a mentor within the workplace. You'll be doing lots of shadowing, lots of coaching sessions with people within the setting. So, we're not expecting you to know everything. That's the whole point of training and the apprenticeship program, that they understand your starting point, and you're going to be that bit more confident because you've come through the Skills Bootcamp. But then you've got 12 months ahead of you that's additional training and support, guidance, and mentoring. I
Yeah.
think in terms of the time, obviously we talked about flexibility and how that can work with your family. If you progress onto an apprenticeship, your employer legally has to give you 20% of your working week off the job to study. So let's say, for instance, you were able to work 30 hours on an apprenticeship. 6 of those hours would be time off for training. So that might be attending our webinars, that might be having a one-to-one with your trainer, it might be doing some study within the setting, it might be attending meetings. So, you're going to be doing that during your paid working hours, rather than doing it on top of your day job, if you like.
Yeah. Great. And in terms of employability, I know you've touched on that up to now, and you'll give all this support to help people get a job. We know that there's as you've said, a recruitment crisis in early years, but we also know that it's quite patchy across the country in terms of actual nurseries closing and that kind of thing. How likely is it that people will get a job as a result of the Skills Bootcamp?
So
Can that be
obviously,
guaranteed? Yeah.
yeah, I think where we've got people, we send them for interviews. I'll give you an example. We work with 1,100 early years employers across England. So that's just us as Realise. There's 20,000 registered Ofsted settings across England. So if you're not successful at a particular setting, sometimes that's because it's not a right fit for you, or you're not quite a right fit for them. We have, like I said before, there's huge settings that are across multiple sites, whereas somebody might prefer actually being in a smaller employer. So we'll always work with you to look at what suits your needs. Obviously, the government have committed to extend the funded places again into 2025. So anybody who's 9 months to school age will get 30 hours funded childcare. So this recruitment crisis is not going to go away. Part of our commitment on the Skills Bootcamp is to make sure that we're creating ready-made candidates that provide a talent pipeline for the early years sector as we move forward. So, our course is aimed at level 3. So if you're coming out of the Skills Bootcamp and you've attended all of the sessions and you've done your portfolio of evidence, you're going to be job ready, and therefore ready for that next step in the early years. So the current recruitment crisis is going to probably be exacerbated further in 2025, and we see Skills Bootcamps as a real key to supporting that crisis as we move
So,
forward.
yeah, great. And if people are interested in joining a Skills Bootcamp, what would be their next step? Do they just go on a website? How do they find out more about it?
Yeah, so you can see we've put some links in the chat there around how to apply for a Skills Bootcamp. What I would say is all of our Skills Bootcamps are linked to real vacancies with real employers. So we have anything between 250 and 300 live vacancies at any point. So if you go onto our website, you'll see all of the live vacancies that are available at the moment. So the bootcamp isn't linked to, not vacancies that aren't there. They're real vacancies that with real employers that we work with. And sometimes people say, oh, if you get a really good Skills Bootcamp candidate that's due to finish, can you send them us anyway? Because we may not have something advertised, but that doesn't mean to say that we wouldn't take somebody that's, really, really good, that's looking for that next step in their career. So either through our website, which the links have been popped into the chat, or you can apply directly through the vacancies that are again on our website.
And is that's up and down the country, I'm assuming?
Yeah, nationally, all over England. So throughout England, you can be anywhere based in England and you'll be eligible to join. I know somebody asked about eligibility. So you do have to be over 19 to attend a Skills Bootcamp. And you also have to have been a resident in the UK for the last 3 years. So those are really the only two eligibility criteria. Geography is absolutely fine as long as it's in England geography that you live in, and it's just 19 plus, and you've got to have lived in the UK for at least 3 years.
So if you go on the website and you say you're in Manchester, and there's vacancies in Manchester, then you want to get onto a skills boot camp. But how do you find out? Maybe there's one that's starting in 2 weeks' time or something like that, but you can't do that one. Do you just wait until the next one comes? Can you register and you kind of wait until?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Again, because so if we started delivery in February, and our deliveries change lots just to meet everybody's needs. We wanted them to be accessible and flexible. So at the start of this month, we have started what we call roll on, roll off. It means you can join at any time. So if you were to apply to us today or early next week, we have a cohort that starts every single Monday. So if you applied next week, you could start the Monday after. So it is really, really flexible. You're not having to wait around. It means that once you start 6 weeks later, you could be finished the boot camp and ready to start your career in early years.
Yeah. And you can, I mean, I'm looking at some of the questions here, asking about when is the boot camp, and can you work part-time, which you've obviously covered, because you said you could do it in the morning, the afternoon, or maybe even the evening. So
Yeah.
people could actually do it around the work that they're doing at the moment. Are most people going into sort of I guess minimum wage jobs? I mean, I know that's one of the issues with child in the early years sector, but how much room is there to then move up?
It really depends on the employer. It's a really good question. So some employers will pay national minimum wage because that's obviously based on maybe where they're based, the size of their setting. It's very, very different, but they may equally have really, really good benefits. So it's not just about the pay, it's thinking about the whole package. So they may be able to offer more flexibility, part-time hours. So when you're making that judgment about whether that employer is right for you, there's lots of things to take into account. So it is pay, but it is benefits and flexibility. But some of our employers pay way above national minimum wage because they identify that skills bootcamps learners are going to be that little bit more ready, that more engaged, ready for that career in early years. So we would work with you around that as well. So the vacancy would be advertised, and that'll tell you what salary that employer is offering. And sometimes they'll do a sliding scale. So it could be, depending on your experience and prior achievements, it could be something, it could be on a sliding scale, basically.
Okay, great. And somebody's asked, can you still join this if you already have a level 3 NBQ in childcare and education? She said she did this 20 years ago and she's thinking of returning to the field. So is this something that you would be good for a returner?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to refresh that knowledge. Obviously for that person who's already done a level 3, we wouldn't be looking at putting those onto an apprenticeship afterwards because they've already got the level 3 qualification. So we wouldn't be able to do anything in terms of moving them onto an apprenticeship, but we could still support them in getting a job. Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. And another person has asked whether it would help somebody who wants to work in a primary school setting at some point in the future. I'm guessing yes. Any
Yeah.
experience of working with children is good.
Yeah, absolutely. We are focused on early years. So when we talk about early years, it is 0 to 5. So if you were looking to work in a primary school with reception children, and again, talking about the differences in different settings within early years, you can have a primary school that's got a nursery attached to it, so a maintained nursery, which means actually you could work in the nursery or the reception. But actually, if you ended up working with older children, those things around child development, we cover that 0 to 7. Looking at the EYFS, you'll still be have knowledge of curriculums that you can apply to working with slightly older children.
Right. Also, somebody's asked, if there aren't any vacancies at the moment in their area, can they still register that they're interested? And when something comes up, they'll be sort of alerted, will they?
Yeah, so I think that, again, that's a really good point. So when we've talked about before, we've got vacancies virtually in most places around the country, but we obviously don't want travel to be a barrier. We don't want people having to get 3 buses because we know that's just not going to be sustainable. So if we don't have a current vacancy in your area, we have a team of regional engagement officers that will work with local employers. So we would phone them up and say, we've got a really good candidate that's just coming from a Skills Bootcamp. We know you don't have a vacancy advertised at the moment, but would you be interested in interviewing? Because it might not be that they're advertising right now, but they might know that somebody's about to go off on maternity leave or has, chosen to move to another setting. So they'll kind of know what their workforce planning looks like for the future. So part of the Skills Bootcamp is that we make a commitment to you to make sure that you get a guaranteed interview with an early years employer. And also we help you move into that role with the employer. So yeah, we will absolutely help you to look at areas where we don't have vacancies at present.
Well, so another question that's come in, and there's a couple of questions around this kind of thing, is if you want to get a job straight away in early years, you're already applying to early years. If you say that you're doing the Skills Bootcamp, can you apply for a job already before you've even finished the Skills Bootcamp? And what would it affect if you're on benefits? Would it affect any benefits that you're getting?
So the Skills Bootcamp won't affect your benefits because obviously we're not paying people and there's no we don't actually cover costs. Obviously the job centre would know about bursaries and things that are available, and each DWP that we work with tend to have different sort of incentives and pots of money to be able to support that. Obviously once you're on the programme, that would depend on your circumstances. So again, you would be in paid employment by that point. So that would be a conversation obviously with your JCP advisor, just to make sure that you were claiming what you're still able to claim within the boundaries of obviously what you're earning. Was there another part to that question? Sorry, I think what was the first part? Was it about
was whether you can sort of go for a job now and say I'm on the boot camp?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, our career coach, once you hit a certain part of your program, and we always say you really need to do the safeguarding learning phase before you go for your interview, because they're going to ask you about safeguarding children, the different laws around it, what you would do in certain situations. So once you've done the safeguarding phase, then our career coach will be working with you to say, right, come on, let's get that interview booked in. That could be as soon as like week 2 or week 3, but for some it might be week 5 and 6. So yeah, absolutely, you can't apply for a job until this point. You can apply really, really early on into the Skills Bootcamp.
Yeah. And another question that's come in is this sort of the boots camp good for people who want to say be an au pair or a childminder or anything like that, where they might want to work more from their own home?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, one of the things that we look at is how you're applying the skills and knowledge that you've learned in your Skills Bootcamp to your next role. So it doesn't necessarily have to be working in a setting or going on to an apprenticeship. It can be that you utilise those skills to work within the industry in a slightly different way. So childminding is a really, really good example of that. Obviously, you can run that from your own home. And if you've got young children, that's obviously quite a benefit. Yeah, nannying, au pair, you're going to take those skills and knowledge that you've learned on the bootcamp and apply it to your role.
Yeah. Yeah, and somebody here is asking, somebody did just ask, does it cover nannies?
Yeah,
you
it does.
Answered. Fantastic. Well, there's been so many questions coming in and people are really, really interested in all sorts of things. And I know that if we haven't answered the questions that you've had, we'll go through the chat and make sure that you get an answer in the next week or so. Thank you so much, Karen. I wanted to end by sort of coming back to that whole issue about what skills you think working mums might have that are particularly beneficial in this field. I mean, it's quite, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have an absolute head start, communicating with children, having that patience, multitasking, being able to, listen to children and do other things within your working day. So employers really, really see that as a key benefit, that, you've already got those skills and some of that knowledge when you've had your own children. And I just think what an amazing way to make sure that other children get the best start in life. If you can impart your knowledge and skills on the children and families that you work with, that's a brilliant outcome for our early years children in the future. So yeah, definitely don't being a parent absolutely gives you lots of knowledge and skills. So yeah, go and use them. That's what I would say. Definitely take those into the industry, because we need people like you guys.
Yeah, great, great. Good to end on a big power note because I think we sometimes so underplay our skills, particularly if you've been out of the workforce for a while and that confidence issue came up in the poll. But
Yeah.
you have lots and lots of skills, and particularly in this area. So don't underestimate that. Well, I hope that you've all got quite a lot out of this session. I've certainly learned a lot. And thank you so much, Karen, for coming on and answering the questions. And please do go to the Skills Bootcamp website and register or find out more if you're interested in taking this further. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.